back as promised to report back on how my biopsy went. It's been a few days since I've gotten my diagnosis, and I do in fact have a form of precancer called DCIS. It's ductal carcinoma in situ, and it's a form of precancer that's been around for a while. In the last couple of decades, there has been a little bit more concern about it as a diagnosis than there was before that. It was seen as kind of a dormant cancer before, and now it's treated as a little bit more of a threat. But generally, it is pretty dormant. It is not seen as an active form of cancer. Most of my testing has been done on the sample that was received in my biopsy, and there's one more test that needs to be done. That's called an oncotyping test. It's a genetic test to see kind of the likelihood that this would turn into something a little more aggressive. But for now, as far as all the markers we know about in the initial test, it looks like it's just DCIS. So I'm very relieved. It could be so much worse. This is the kind of cancer they've done studies and found it in women after they've died of natural causes or other causes, and about 40% of the population studied on autopsy did have this type of cancer, and it had never been an issue for them. So you can live a long life with this type of precancer, and it's not always an issue. However, these days there is often a recommendation that you go in and surgically remove it, and there isn't usually any need for chemo or radiation, but sometimes they do prescribe an anti-estrogen drug. So that's kind of the expected treatment for it. I really have no idea what my oncologist will recommend as treatment, but that's typical. Is if there's any lack of clarity, or if the patient just wants to be extra careful, they tend to go the extreme invasive surgical route. I'm definitely not that patient. I'm way conservative when it comes to invasive surgeries and procedures. The biopsy alone was pretty traumatic for me, and I've got a lot of things yet to try, and so I'm not just sitting here helplessly with cancer inside of me. So I feel fine, really. More worried about my loved ones than I am about me, because I'm a learner, I'm a grower. I like to find out what I can do and do it and do the best at it. And that's what I've been doing, so kind of interesting that I've lived such a clean, toxic-free, nutrient-dense life, and yet I could still get cancer or precancer in this case. So the explanation for that I tell myself anyway, is that I have 3 immune conditions that are probably affecting me, and then I've got the stress of COVID and the things that have happened to us, and my family particularly has been really affected by COVID because my dad has dementia, and he was really going downhill at one point this fall, and we very, very nearly had to put him in a facility where we would not have been able to see him, or my mom would not have been able to see him because of COVID. So that was an extremely stressful period in my life, and just happens to be the time when this situation emerged. So not a coincidence. I mentioned in my last video that I also have Epstein-Barr, that I've had it since I was 18. It's a lifetime chronic immune disorder, and so that's definitely affecting my body in all kinds of ways, ongoingly. I also had a mouthful of silver fillings for my whole childhood and my adulthood up until my late 30s, when I was able to afford to be able to extract them. And so I have a lot of mercury in my system. I have, for 20, 30 years, I was absorbing mercury that was constantly off-gassing in my mouth and going into my nasal cavity and into my brain and my bloodstream, and probably is still stored in my bones, and definitely is a weakener of the immune system. and a toxin that's pretty significant. So I did do some oral chelation, which is much milder and easier for the body to handle than the IV chelation. Now I wish I had spent the money and done the IV chelation to get some of that mercury out in hindsight. And I don't know if that will even be a wise choice at this point, because bringing it out is also very traumatic for the body. But that's a reality that weakens me as well, that I'm aware of just through my learning and exploring through holistic medicine routes. And then I also have mold sensitivity. So I have something called chronic inflammatory response syndrome, which is just means I have a genetic marker that 25% of the population has that doesn't allow you to detox or dispose of mold once it enters your body. So I've had moldy environments before, I've had workplaces, and my home has been moldy before, and I've been able to remediate that really effectively. But I just moved into this house 6 months ago in the dry season, and now it's the wet season. So that could really be affecting me hugely as well. So I'm going to be seeing a doctor that specializes in that chronic inflammatory response syndrome. It's pretty hard to find a doctor that specializes in that, but there are a few of them in Oregon where I live. I've already seen one, and it was she was able to diagnose me at least, but she wasn't able to treat me. And so I'm going to see a different doctor now in the coming weeks and see if we can do some treatment around that, just because I am in this more fragile situation now. But I have been, like I said, really good at managing my diet, my sleep hygiene, my low toxin lifestyle. I've cleaned up my kitchen and my bathroom in terms of all of the products that I use, that I consume. Gotten the plastics out, I've gotten all the perfumes out and the chemical cleansers and lotions out of my bathroom, and I just use a really, really bare bones, non-toxic set of single ingredient applications for my skin and my hair. So I've learned a ton about that, and this just really brings home the reality of my advice to other women when I've spoken to groups of women that have been cancer survivors. When I say to them, we all have cancer cells in our body, we're all doing the best we can to fight them off, and I too could get cancer, and now I've found out that that is really the case. And when I'm teaching other women not to blame themselves for their lifestyle choices and for giving them kudos for doing the best they can, I have to do that to myself. So I do that on a daily basis. Remind myself that this is not my fault. This is something that is way, way beyond what I can control. So, like I said, it's been the hardest days have been the days when I've had to talk to my loved ones about the scary parts of having a biopsy and then getting a diagnosis that's confusing for everyone else. It will be scary when I see my surgical oncologist next week. It'll be a week from tomorrow when I see her. And I will make more videos to describe how that goes. I want to share that with you as well, and hopefully that will be helpful to you. And I'll see you then. Take care.